Hi, y'all. That sounds better. Much better. Ooh, ah. It's nice to see you all. It's great to have a kind of full room here, and welcome. I'm going to keep this intro short and sweet. We haven't done a real hybrid event like this for a while, so I'm really excited to be able to bring in Mindy Seu. We've got a pretty full room. We've got some snacks here. And we've got some folks online watching as well, so we're going to do our best to keep these communities kind of blended together. For anyone who decides you want to watch this later, there will be a link posted on our Instagram afterwards, once it's done, that you can rewatch it if there was anything really inspiring. So I'm going to kick right into this pretty quick here. We're here for the design lecture series, which is part of PNCA Design. Here at the Pacific Northwest College of Art. And we were excited to bring in Mindy, both from graphic design from our standpoint, and for the MFA programs who focus on critical studies as well. So for both of us, I think it's not only the beautiful work, but the beautiful brains that are behind this, and all things cyber and feminist are intriguing to me. The process of archiving things, of mining that data and figuring out new ways to make it come alive are really thrilling. Mindy Seu is a designer and a technologist based in New York City, where she's joining us now from there. She's currently teaching as an assistant professor at Rutgers Mason Gross School of the Arts and Critic at Yale School of Art. Her expanded practice involves archival projects, techno-critical writing, performative lectures, and ongoing design commissions. Mindy's Cyberfeminism Index, which is also an ongoing project, a living project, gathers 3 decades of online activism and net art, and was commissioned by Rhizome, presented at the New Museum, and awarded a Graham Foundation grant. So this talk is part of Mindy's Cyberfeminism book tour, and I was lucky enough to see her present this last spring, I guess, at Fisk. Here in Portland, and it's just really dynamic, cool work. I was very inspired by the format of the book and seeing how relevant it is to capture this thing as a moment in time, and kind of how it takes inspiration from the web archive that it's drawing from, and can continue to evolve. We think of print as being a medium that's kind of frozen, in a moment, but this project really questions how that works and how that can interact and redirect you to other forms that are ongoing. So I am thrilled to see your work and to have you open this up for everybody here. Welcome, Mindy.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Wish I could be there with you all, but thanks for tuning in person and online. I'm going to walk you through, as Kristen mentioned, my latest project, the Cyberfeminism Index. I'm going to screen share so you're able to see what I see. And you should be seeing my hands on the book. All right. So this book, the Cyberfeminism Index, is a source book. It's a chronology that's annotated, and it's also a collection of online activism and net art from the past 3 decades, which is structured as an index of indexes. And I'll kind of walk you through what that means. But before getting into the book content and how this project came to be, we might first ask, what is cyberfeminism? So this word, by definition, has historically been left pretty open-ended. A lot of different people have different definitions of this word. If you were to ask me, I would start by breaking apart the word itself. So this prefix cyber first emerged in Norbert Wiener's Cybernetics of the 1940s. In the most simple one-liner, this proposes that not only do you impact a system, that system is also impacting you. So you're in this constant loop of feedback loop of change, of inputs and outputs. Cyber was then fixed to space to become cyberspace in the 1980 science fiction novel Neuromancer by William Gibson. So Gibson's cyberspace was really important for a lot of reasons. It kind of predicted the sensory networked online landscapes that are very much in conversation today. But it was also very much characterized by the male gaze. So you have fembots and cyberbabes and depictions of women in robotic or assistant-like roles. So when cyber was then fixed to feminism in 1991, this was done by two distinct parties, unbeknownst to the other. So the first was the Australian art collective VNS Matrix, and the second was the British cultural theorist Sadie Plant. By bringing together these seemingly disparate word parts, it was almost a provocation or an oxymoron. How could feminists or women or marginalized communities shape what cyberspace could be? And we see a lot of examples in this book that range from techno-utopic to dystopic to everything in between. The sticker itself comes from the website of the Old Boys Network. So this website came out in 1997 during the first Cyberfeminist International. The sticker comes from the page of Helene von Oldenburg, in which she asked the public about their opinion of cyberfeminism. And as you can see by this pie chart, again, it didn't have a very clean answer. Instead of giving a concise definition as to what cyberfeminism included, they instead co-wrote the 100 antitheses, which listed 100 poetic, playful, and multi-hyphenate definitions as to what cyberfeminism was not, in the attempt to be more inclusive and adaptable. This book is also the edited hard copy of a soft copy called cyberfeminismindex.com. So this website was made in 2020 in collaboration with Angela Meitzer, Charles Bruskowski, and Janine Rosen. It was commissioned by Rhizome at the New Museum. And it really serves as the living complement to this book. So while we often think of websites as mutable and ephemeral, and books as immutable and finite, and oftentimes more legitimizing, here we're trying to kind of twist that on its head. So the website serves as the living index that is constantly crowdsourced, and you're all welcome to submit entries to cyberfeminismindex.com. And simultaneously, the book then acts as a snapshot of a moment of the website's mutation. So even since creating this book and freezing the website to make the manuscript, there's been 300 additional entries on the website that you can view now. And I'll talk about this project a bit more later. This book is also an interface filled with hyperlinks that will connect you with complementary entries and encourage nonlinear reading. Keep an eye out for these green pills in the excerpts of all of these different entries. So we might associate the hyperlink with a digital link, but it's important to note that there were a lot of analog precursors to this, including cross-references, bibliographies, footnotes, all early examples of analog hyperlinks that served as inspiration for the digital hyperlink. So in entry 146, Cyberfeminism, Connectivity, Critique, and Creativity from 1999, they actually call their cross-references in their editor's notes a hypertextual link. And then in the margins, you'll see this eye icon that pushes and pulls you to different parts of the book that have complementary or juxtaposed themes. Hyperlinks or cross-references ultimately show that nothing is isolated, that all knowledge, all art, and all activism is made richer through those that came before it, those that are around it, and ultimately what you choose to do with it. So if you were to follow a path of cross-references in this book, that hyperlink learning trail might read something like this. Cyberfeminism is a mutating word with a nebulous history. Its evolution is less a single root system with multiple branches than a network of entangled rhizomes, constantly and multidirectionally moving. Virginia Barrett of the Australian art collective VNS Matrix has described cyberfeminism as anti-genealogical, anti-authorial, and a hostile mucus, never faithful to any origins. Cross-reference 8. VNS Matrix, 1991. The most consistent VNS Matrix genesis story is that VNS Matrix crawled out of the cyber swamp in the particularly hot summer of 1991, and via an aesthetics of slime initially generated as porn, by women, for women. VNS Matrix forged an unholy alliance with technology and its machines, and spewed forth a blasphemous text which was the birth of cyberfeminism. VNS Matrix was on a mission to hijack the toys from techno-cowboys and remap cyberculture with a feminist bent. This is one story. There are also stories about a slime consciousness operating via spiral space. Cross-reference 181. (181) Tales from the Puppet Mistress, Gash Girl, 2000. Years after losing my machine virginity to a Mac 512K, I have slipped through the reality grid into the clear, violent haze of spiral space. Desire. I slide through the luminous screen to inhabit the spaces between words. The keyboard is constantly sticky. Madness. An erotically reconstructed replicant, my biocode is being rewritten. This is better than any drug. Cross-reference 646. (646) Disquartizadora, Ripper. Mestiza of the southern pussy, meat of a pussy that expels word vomit, conserved by death and disgust of the colonization representing an ancestral systemic violation in live meat. I do not feel pride because I was born full of prejudices. No man's land. Cross-reference 95. (95) Confessions of a Webback, Guillermo Gomez Peña with Evanthea Shipstead, 1997. You call yourself a webback. Do you see yourself as an intruder on the net? Yes, the number of Latino students, artists, and activists on the net is minute, but we want to participate in the national and cultural debates, and many are permeated by technology. I consider myself a coyote, a smuggler of ideas. So, as you can see, in this main section that we're in, this primary index feels kind of like an encyclopedia. And similar to reading an encyclopedia, you likely wouldn't do that cover to cover. You might open the book at random, find an entry that resonates with you, find associations on the page, or in this book, you can use these cross-references to hop to different parts of the book. These cross-references are almost my curatorial trail throughout the book, but of course, people are very much welcome to create their own and highly encouraged to do so. So, if you're looking for more of a guided tour, there's also the collection section at the very beginning. So here we have various artists, activists, scholars, and collectives who created a theme like Indigenous futurism and selected 10 to 20 entries in this book related to that theme. So Skawanati, who's largely considered one of the first Indigenous net artists, has selected these entries to create their curatorial trail. If you're looking for something specific, there's also an index of titles. as well as an index of people. But if you're looking for more serendipitous discovery, there's also the index of images. All New Gen, VNS Matrix, 1992. Sabotage the databanks of Big Daddy mainframe. Your guides through the contested zone are renegade DNA sluts. The most wicked is Circuit Boy, a dangerous techno bimbo. Be prepared to question your gendered construction. Genital Panic, Merry Magic, 2020. We must reconsider the normative body and how disobedient bodies are already pathologized, from the medicalization of infants born of ambiguous genitalia to the disqualification of intersex athletes on the basis of biology. These guidelines matter. They determine how we are policed and how we are surveilled. The Black Trans Archive, Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley, 2020. Welcome to the Pro-Black, Pro-Trans Archive. This interactive archive was made to store and center Black trans people, to preserve our experiences, our thoughts, our feelings, our lives, to remember us even when we are at risk of being erased. So when you first enter this site, you have three options. The first is if you're Black and trans, the second is if you're trans, and the third is if you're cis. And depending on your selection, you would have access to a different body of content within this online space. Time Traveler TM, Scawanati, 2008. This is a website from the future. Watch for upcoming episodes in which Hunter Deerhouse sails to Europe with Pocahontas in AD 1615, aids and abets the Dakota Sioux Uprising of 1862, and finds true love in the Kanawake Mohawk Territory in 2009. So what you're seeing here is a trailer of a machinima. A machinima is a portmanteau of machine and cinema. These were often plays or films that happened within video games, and the recording was then recorded as a video art piece. You can watch all 6 episodes of Time Traveler TM on Scawanati's site. Afro Cyber Resistance, Tabitha Rezaire, 2014. We need to quickly snap out of the Web 2.0 fantasy of the internet as a promised land. Whatever visions that ideologically shaped this technology at the beginning of the development of computers have now successfully been structurally organized to serve the primary interests of North American governmental bodies and the commercial interests of the world's wealthiest companies. Daddy Residency, Nahi Kim, 2019. I plan to have a baby after 7 years by artificial insemination, and I'd like to have a variety of companions for that rigorous but invaluable parenting experience. So I'm launching this open call for daddy residents who want to raise the baby with me for a certain amount of time. The application deadline is July 31st, 2025. So everyone here still has a couple more years to apply to be Nahi's baby daddy. All right, last but not least, the Old Boys Network, 1997. The Old Boys Network is regarded as the first international cyberfeminist alliance. Normally, the term Old Boys Network is used as a metaphor to describe an informal interrelation of men. Nowadays, the Old Voice Network may be used for a dangerous cyberfeminist virus. So because we are talking to a group of researchers and designers, I also wanted to talk about how this project came to fruition over the past 5 years, and especially how it's changed form in that time. So when I first began this process, I scraped the bibliographies of academic articles like Donna Haraway's A Cyborg Manifesto. And while this led to many valuable references, it primarily cited Western theories of technology and ecology. I really wanted to try to find a way to bring together this idea of theory and practice, which was introduced to me by Judy Malloy, who also wrote a compendium of media arts, which you can see on page 179. Women, Art and Technology, 2003. So here, Judy Malloy, during our phone calls, suggested the idea of yak and hack, which is essentially theory and practice. Yak, 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 like talking, and hack, like making, and how these two things are inextricably entangled. So I then started to add a lot of these references with suggestions from other researchers, artists, etc., to a spreadsheet, which looks like this. So this spreadsheet includes standard details like date, title, and author. In purple, you'll see that yak and hack. The blue is taxonomy, which is the most difficult as many entries don't fit neatly into specific categories. And the green is media. In using these predetermined categories at the top, you'll find that entries don't fit neatly into these columns. Using existing taxonomic terms prevented the blurriness in between categories or the ability for the author to self-identify what a categorical term might be most suited for them. So what we did then was we actually removed all of these when we were to build the website. But first, I wanted to kind of give you a brief history of the digital spreadsheet. Oops. So this is Ted Nelson. He's considered the father of the concept of hypertext. When digital spreadsheets first appeared, they were considered, quote, functional programming for the masses. This was a liberatory technology. Anyone with access to a personal computer and a digital spreadsheet could start to do some fairly complex computations online. However, quote, conventional data structures, especially tables and arrays, are confined structures that create a rigid top-down specification that enforces regularity and rectangularity. This is a quote by Ted Nelson here as he talks about Zigzag, his n-dimensional spreadsheet tool. So here you can kind of see this 2x3 grid. And what's unique about Zigzag is unlike having an X and Y axis, you can actually click on a cell and add it to any other direction. So things like this is actually quite important when you think about how rigid a lot of these bureaucratic forms might be. So for example, if you go to a survey and it asks you to check your gender, there might be male, female, and other. Maybe that's become much more robust now, but with a tool like this, it would actually allow you to essentially create new tools, allow for a variety of other tools. It was essentially creating a regular system that embraced the irregular. And I think this is essentially the open-endedness that we were really after. So after the spreadsheet, our second container was the website, which you saw a glimpse of in the very beginning. So when Angeline and I were working on the second container of the Cyberfeminism Index, our primary question was, how do websites age? And according to Forbes, the average lifespan of that website is around 2.5 years. And by that measure, our site would already be down because it came out in 2020. So one of the things that we are quite lucky to have is a lot of the examples in the index are from the 90s. Many are broken, but some are still working. And we are basically able to hypothesize or guesstimate why that was the case. An example of those was the 100 Antitheses by the Old Boys Network. So this URL has changed, but this website still works perfectly, and we can begin to guess why. So it's hard-coded by Cornelius Solfrank. That means it's not using any third-party libraries or dynamic content. It's using primarily HTML and CSS, which are the backbones of all websites. It's leaning on a lot of defaults like H1, H2 list items, and even reappropriating these defaults in unusual ways, like this form field, the drop-down, as a navigation bar. It's also using CSS Blue and Arial. So fun fact, Arial is one of the few system fonts that was co-designed by a woman, Patricia Saunders, for IBM in the early 80s. That's also why we use Arial for the book and the website. Arial narrow in the book because we needed a bit more space, but it was really important for us to use a system font or something that felt open access. So on our site, it snaps to what appears to be a fairly standard table, but upon interaction, the site is made to feel unusual. As you click different entries, intuitively or intentionally, they're added to the side panel, which we call the learning trail, that you can then download to create your own snapshot. So, while you can find this book in most bookstores, all online retailers, you can also go to the website and essentially print out a version of your own, or at least download that PDF. And I highly encourage this, actually. We don't store any of this on the back end. We don't track your IP. We do track how many entries were downloaded at what time, but not who downloaded it and which entries were downloaded. Excuse me. So how did that website then become this book? So we actually froze the website at a certain point in time. We then imported that into Google Docs, where my editor, Andrew Scheinman, and I edited it in Google Docs for about 6 months. And we also color coordinated the entire thing. And that looks something like this. So you see a red title, green metadata, blue annotations. Here you see the cursor of Lily Healy. So I collaborated with Laura Combs, who was the designer of the book, and she knew that because it was so robust and each entry was so specific, that we had to kind of script the content in order to wrap things correctly. So she recruited Lily Healy, who was a programmer at the New Yorker, and scripts every issue each week. So here, Lily is downloading the XML and importing it into InDesign. InDesign here appears to be blank, but as you drag in the XML file, you'll see that it's come pre-tagged with Laura's character styles, paragraph styles, object styles, grids, guides, fonts, etc. And this generated about 400 pages of the book almost instantaneously. If only it was that easy. I can actually illustrate how big this index is. It's about 400 pages. You can see that it's quite thick. But with these 400 pages, it actually flows from the first column all the way to the last one. So what that means is every time we got rid of a widow, we added an image or a caption, we broke some hyphenation, it would push the subsequent column across 400 pages. So what that does is it makes it very, very difficult to typeset in layout. And we actually found that in certain instances, it was easier to re-script the entire thing and import it again. Each template is also very much scripted. So like our full quotes. This was a different script. Our other indexes, our image spreads, and our image thumbnails. All of these were using different scripts that we then collated into the book. I think this really goes to show that all of these things that seem efficient and seamless and hyper-technological often requires an individual human hand. Laura had to typeset this book for months in layout, even as all of these things were collated. So I think it goes to show that we can't only rely on technology. All of these things are kind of prototyped and manipulated in real time. I also wanted to talk briefly about maybe what I call the fourth container or project, which is the AR that you just saw. And I'll kind of walk you through how this works because I love it behind the scenes, especially for designers. So I worked with Tommy Martinez, who created the AR version or the AR application. We essentially took 500 by 500 pixels of the image that was the highest contrast. This allowed the camera, or the AR application was built in Unity, and the image target would be scanned by the camera. If it was scanned fast enough, it would overlay that with a respective video, which you can see it pop up here. There were all sorts of hacks and obstacles to this also. So, for example, with Mary Magic's open source estrogen, here we see the video on top of this page. But if you actually look at Mary's video, there's actually not that many high contrast areas. Sorry, I have to hide this target. So we couldn't actually stitch it to this part of the page. So what we did instead was essentially create a soft optical illusion, and we stitched it to the right-hand page instead. So we piece these things together, but it actually has nothing to do with Mary's page. It only exists on the right. Another hack that we found was something like this. So we see this as two distinct halves, this pink and green, but if you look at it black and white tonally, it's actually quite flat. So there wasn't enough contrast on this page for the camera to quickly scan an image, no matter where we tried. So what we then introduced was the idea of the key press, which looks something like this. So this is the trailer for Shuli Chang's IKU, which is essentially a science fiction porn film that takes off where Blade Runner left off. There's actually a sequel coming out this year called UKI, which I highly recommend watching. Keep an eye out for your local museum, which might be screening that soon. But a key press is essentially a video that appears with the key press on my keyboard, but really has nothing to do with the book. This is just something where I can pick full screen, center, left, or right. And again, when I overlay it, we begin to build this association. So the same thing goes for something like this. This is just on the right-hand side of the page. This was actually really helpful for these indexical pages because initially we had planned for all of these thumbnails to have a target, but it just doesn't scan fast enough for this to register as different from this. So what we actually had to do then is just have key presses for different parts of the page, and I would choreograph that as you saw earlier. Okay. So all that said, I wanted to end with the acknowledgements. So this is a table of contents, a title sequence typically reserved for the ends of films or video art pieces. But it really goes to show the vast network of people that's required to make projects like these happen. So not only the infrastructural support, but also the front and back matter, like the forward, afterward, and collections. The referred by are all of the people who I talked to that created the foundational entries for the basis of that initial spreadsheet. The submitted by are all the people that submitted entries on the website at the moment the website was frozen. So there are many more now. So something Laura and I considered, and that I've been also asked, is if this is a co-authored index, you can see all of these people's names underneath the entries that they submitted. Why is my name on the cover? And when Laura and I were doing research, we found that a lot of these compendiums or history books and textbooks have the byline is often invisible or very much hidden away. And what this might suggest is what you're looking at is almost presented as an objective truth or a singular history. By trying to emphasize the authoring editor, it suggests that this is an index curated from a very subjective lens. There are certainly other books about cyberfeminism. But also the rules of moderation are created by myself. There are all these other variables for how this book came to be. This name doesn't necessarily give you someone to celebrate, but rather someone to blame, a steward of this collection, and blame they have, because every time there's an error on the website or the book, I get an email, and I really welcome them because it's a process that's growing over time. But that said, I truly hope that this is something that we might consider moving forward. Like, how can we understand these multiple histories that are quite nuanced and how that might be embedded into each other? On the byline, ooh, my focus is out. I have to do a quick trick. I'm going to turn off this light, which makes it snap back. So my book kind of has become a yearbook with the other panelists. But you can see in the byline that it says gathered by Mindy Seu. This gathered by is something that's quite important. Laura first noticed this as the byline for Adrienne Marie Brown's Pleasure Activism. This gathering, this book feels like a gathering practice. It's bringing together disparate entries into a single container, or multiple containers, how you see the different projects. Which is an example of material gathering, but it's also allowed for social gatherings like these. Like, we are in a gathering now, and I think this ability to discuss and activate the different collections, allow that discourse to emerge, has been really the most rewarding part of this project. So all that said, I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can jump into a Q&A, and I'd welcome any of your questions. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm just turning mics back on.
Oh, Kristen, I don't think that mic's on.
Just turning mics back on here. Can you hear me? Okay, cool.
Yes. I'm going to move this camera now.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so fun. You didn't get to hear the applause from the room, but everybody's like, I was mesmerized too. So because we have this kind of funny setup here, I'm going to encourage people, if you do have questions, to just queue up. If you want to, you can just come up here. And if you don't feel like you want to be on the mic, I will tell you, your voice sounds great on the mic. It sounds amazing. I love a mic. If you don't feel good about that, there's some Post-its on the round tables, and you can just kind of wave one in the air or bring one over to me, and I'll happily ask it for you. And then Flo is in the back of the room kind of monitoring the live stream chat, and she'll come up if there are questions online. So.
Great.
I'm going to step away from the mic and welcome one of you guys up here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Zoe. I was wondering if you had any advice for a beginning archival project enthusiast.
Oh, wow, broad question. I like how you describe it as archival enthusiast, because that's certainly how I see myself too. I do not describe myself as an archivist. I have way too much respect for people with archival science degrees. Something I have realized is that so many thoughts here. Archives, capital A archives, suggest there's a method of generational preservational transfer. That's why in this book we use the word index and not archive. All of these things are snippets that we point outward, whereas an archive really safeguards those in a singular area in full, in whole, or as whole as something might be. This is also very tricky because oftentimes these are held in institutions. All of those things are highly regulated. We have to choose what is considered worthy of archiving or not, and that of course is quite contentious. Something I might look into is when you're thinking about developing a grassroots archival project, see if the community that you're working with already has this kind of ephemera or something collected. I think we're kind of in an era where everyone wants to be the inventor and no one wants to be the maintainer, but projects like these almost require an oath of maintenance. And so much work has already been done on the ground, so drawing from those, I think, is actually quite valuable. So I could go on and on and on about this, but I hope that little snippet is helpful. Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you so much.
Zoe
Thank
says
you.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna.
Hi, Anna.
My question is, since this is like a snapshot that you took and then made into the physical copy, would you ever do like a second edition? And would that be this copy with additional pages, or would it be, because I guess it's all interlinked?
Yes, so I've been asked this question a lot, and I would say initially I was planning to self-publish this book. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons. It's very difficult for distribution. So when working with Inventory Press, one thing that we agreed upon is that there needs to be an ISBN. My book is completely destroyed, as you can see, but there has to be an ISBN, and it has to be included in the Library of Congress. So these two things were very important to me, because when you're creating a grassroots collection or archive or index, you often have to kind of infiltrate existing institutions to use those resources to your advantage. And I knew that by creating it, putting it in the Library of Congress, which is a forever institution, also putting the website within Rhizome's art base, which is another forever institution, this would help with this generational preservational transfer. All this said, no, I probably would not reprint another book. I mean, I think right now I'm also very tired from this one. I would much rather focus on making the print-on-demand version on the website much more robust, because this is the thing that people can then print out their own. It encourages this active downloading, and the online website is growing more and more and more. So I think I'd much rather put my energy there. So hopefully if we get a grant, something that might happen in phase 5. But for now, we're sticking with the book that we have. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Megan. I was curious,
Megan.
like, what's the process of adding new material to the site, new pieces?
So I would say on the site now, maybe 65% is crowdsourced. The rest are entries found by me. For the crowdsourced entries on the submit form, they basically add their name, the name of the person whose work they're submitting, a title, a year, and a link or something that I can refer to. And then we have different types of moderation for those. And then essentially me or an assistant or a steward will essentially go to that site, pull relevant images, pull an excerpt, fortify that link in Wayback Machine or Conifer, etc., and then pull that onto the site. So while people do submit, the act of selecting a specific entry really, or image, feels much more personal in a way. In that way, it is a bit curatorial. That said, people can also be very specific. So people have emailed me with like a selection of images and captions, which I can then view and then add specifically. So there's different levels of effort, I think, which we're intentionally doing to make it feel as accessible as possible.
That's awesome. Thank you. So much easier than adding to Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia, we were thinking about making a wiki too, but again, learning curve, right? So yeah, thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Brendy.
Hey, Brendy.
Hey, I had a question about access in languages. In your archives and going into the past, have you found things that were, I mean, the book's written in English. Are there any sites or anything that you found in different languages that have been translated? Or do you plan on translating stuff in the future or having multiple languages?
Yeah. So this is a very important question. So cyberfeminism is very international. The name is constantly mutating, but this idea of like a critical use of technology from a feminist perspective is worldwide. I found that when I was looking for initial entries, if I typed like Korean feminism, cyberfeminism into JSTOR, I wouldn't actually get that many entries. But then I learned from a Korean scholar that they're actually called net femis in Korea. Or in Latin America, they're called hack feministas, not cyber feminists. And this is all over the world. You have Laborio Cubanics, xenofeminism, Legacy Russell's glitch feminism. There's feminist Afrofuturism. Like there's so many different strands. So we are trying to really bring all of those together in a very imperfect umbrella. If an entry is from a different language, which many in this book are, that language comes first. So if it's submitted in Spanish, there's a Spanish excerpt first, which is then translated into English. Same with the titles. It's always the Spanish title followed by an English translation in brackets, and same with the captions as well. In terms of translating the entire book into a different language moving forward, this is surprisingly, I'm learning about this now, kind of at the mercy of the publishers. So some organizations have come to me wanting to translate the book, and they actually have to have a publisher attached to it in order to get the rights from my publisher, which I actually wasn't aware of. So people can also do this vigilante style, but to do it a formal way, they would have to have some sort of international press with distribution. So yeah, you live and you learn.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Joyce. I really like what you said about hyperlinks, that they show that nothing is isolated. I was wondering where you found inspiration and what you built off of in terms of your own ethos of curation.
Whoa. I think hyperlinks, you can't, if you think about it conceptually, it's almost like a citational practice. So this goes beyond the media and is just making sure you're crediting where things are coming from, whether it's a reference or something specific like an academic article. So these are things like I can actively cite a song if I think about a quote, or if I'm talking to a friend and they say a quote that seems related, I might add that to an arena channel with context of who said it and what situation. Of course, I have a lot of citations from different books, academic articles, essays, news articles. A lot of things said in passing. I think there's different also types of reading styles. Like I'll do a speed read of something, and then if it's relevant, I'll do a close reading with annotations and different excerpts that I can then transport into different annotation engines. But I highly recommend Arena. I've been on this site for almost 10 years now, and it's like a research-based Pinterest if people don't use it. Actually, Charles Bruskowski, who helped make the website, is also one of the co-founders of Arena. But it's really led to like an amazing community of a lot of different types of connections, which are essentially any media type: images, movies, PDF, excerpts, articles, etc. So most of my channels are public. So if you go to my Arena channel, you can see other things that I'm thinking about. Thank you so much.
Do we have any last questions from the room? Or are you guys inspired and full? I think we're set. Mindy, thank you so much.
Thank you
This was really
so
great.
much, Kristen. And thanks so much to the PNCA team. Really appreciate it. All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Yeah, come visit us sometime, next time you're in town.
I would love to. Portland was awesome last time I was there.
We'll see you soon.
So much.
Bye.
Take care.